We're going to move on to our next speaker, who is Shelley Fudge. She's the founder of the DC Metro chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace, and she currently serves on the chapter's leadership steering committee. She also serves on the board of the Washington Interfaith Alliance for Middle East Peace. She's been actively involved in educating elected officials in Montgomery County and the Virginia General Assembly regarding anti-Semitism educational curriculum and passage of local and state definitions of anti-Semitism based on the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So Shelley, please take it away. We're very happy to have you today.
Sure. I hope that, yes, you can see me. I'd like to actually try to provide some additional information about that question of what those who are in the Maryland General Assembly can and cannot do that would be both helpful and to avoid being preventing destructive types of attempts to squelch, suppress free speech. So I am with Jewish Voice for Peace, which Fatima, of course, mentioned. And we rely on Jewish tradition dedicated to achieving social justice, equality, and safety for all people. As part of that, as part of what we do, we are involved in addressing the danger of attempting to define anti-Semitism, as well as attempts to protect Jewish Marylanders by suppressing speech that expresses support for Palestinian rights. Many state and local governments across the US have passed resolutions and bills that do just that. I worked with a group of Montgomery County organizations and individuals voicing opposition to an anti-Semitism definition resolution that was passed by the Montgomery County Council in the fall of 2023. And I worked very closely with CARE on this, as well as others. I also worked with members of Jewish Voice for Peace and others in Virginia to oppose a statewide resolution that was passed during last year's Virginia General Assembly session. Anti-Semitism, and I assume you know this, but I want to reiterate that anti-Semitism is discrimination, targeting, violence, and dehumanizing stereotypes directed at Jews because they are Jewish. The use of Jewish stereotypes and conspiracy theories are part of racist ideologies that endanger many others, including people of color, those who are from various minority religions throughout the US, and others who suffer discrimination and violence, particularly from white nationalists. In other words, it's important to avoid isolating anti-Semitism from other forms of oppression that rely upon fear and hate. Anti-Semitism is not the same as anti-Zionism. Criticism of the Israeli government or its policies is not anti-Semitic. Such criticism is no different than criticism of other political ideologies or policies of any nation state, including the US. Many Jewish Americans have voiced opposition to the Israeli government since its founding and continue to do so. But the Israeli government and anti-Palestinian rights organizations run concerted campaigns to redefine and misstate the meaning of anti-Semitism with the aim of falsely conflating it with criticisms of Israel and Zionism. They do so to protect the Israeli government, to ensure that it avoids accountability for its policies and actions that violate Palestinian human rights. Whereas Judaism is a religion, Zionism is a political philosophy. Anti-Zionists oppose that political philosophy because it is based on the need for a nation state with exclusive rights for Jews above all others who reside within Israel's territory that we refer to as Israel proper, and all of the Palestinian occupied territories. In this vein, it is critically important to recognize that the large establishment Jewish organizations in Maryland, including all of the Jewish federations throughout the state, in Baltimore, Greater Washington, Howard County, and others, as well as the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington and others, do not represent all Jewish Marylanders. Now, I'd like to just briefly also address the attempts to define anti-Semitism because it's extremely important. There is a definition of anti-Semitism that has become very popular called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or the IHRA. A growing number of states and local governments across the US have already passed IHRA resolutions and bills. We are very concerned that an IHRA resolution or bill will be introduced this year in the Maryland General Assembly. The IHRA definition is extremely controversial and divisive. It infringes on the constitutional right of free speech to criticize Israel by equating that criticism of Israel, particularly anti-Zionism, with anti-Semitism. 7 of the guiding examples included in the IHRA definition concern Israel. This so-called definition of anti-Semitism is being used to silence Palestinian human rights advocates and smear anyone who expresses support for Palestinians as anti-Semitic. The lead author of the IHRA definition, Kenneth Stern, developed it in order to collect data and statistics for a European study. And he has repeatedly argued that it should never be used in US legislation and policy. The IHRA will not protect Jews from violent attacks by those associated with extreme right hate groups or from any discrimination. A huge number of Jewish progressives, academics, intellectuals, including Holocaust historians, strongly oppose the IHRA. Many universities and colleges are suppressing speech by students and faculty through the use of the IHRA. 4 teachers were recently placed on administrative leave for expressing support for Palestinian rights and calling for a ceasefire in Gaza by, through any expressions. And this is another issue that we're concerned about because there may also be legislation that could be proposed in the General Assembly that would state that all schools across Maryland would use the IHRA and or use other ways of trying to suppress speech. So we urge you and other elected officials to reject attempts to divide our communities by squelching free speech and instead working toward building a future that ensures that all Marylanders live in freedom and safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley. That was also very informative, and we appreciate your perspective on this. Again, I do have another link for you all. So there is a film called Israelism, and there are groups who have asked us to hold a free virtual screening of it. So if there's any interest, CARE can partner with JVP and PCAP to coordinate it. I'm dropping the link to the rental in the chat.